আর একটা কাজও করতে পারবে না। হুম। দেখা গেল তোমার আজকে মানে ইয়ে করতে হবে। তাহলে তোমরা Hello everyone. Uh, Good afternoon. Welcome to our institution of Global Professional Free Webinar. Thank you all for joining and stay with us till the end. My lovely audience, today I am your host. My name is Sirnis Akhtar and I am from Bangladesh. Dear audience, I am proud to be associated with IGP as a global family. I feel honored and privileged to host this webinar. Thank you all for joining us today in this marvelous afternoon, and it's my humble request and pleasure to all of you stay with us till the end. Dear participant, don't forget to tag, share, and mention your friends. Institution of Global Professionals serves student and community resource, providing holistic social work and education for create a competent generation. IGP is a leading on online skill development institute with thousands of learners worldwide. Institution of Global Professional is an educational institution provides social work with globally recognized. We organized our webinar training offline online courses is by based and trained speaker and coaches from all the world. Our mission is empower people. We have already completed 1060 webinars successfully. Let me remind you again, don't forget to tag, share and mention your friends. Now we'll start our webinar. So let's watch together and learn together. Today our topic is language skill development through innovative teaching, and our number is 1061. And today we have our speakers. Speaker name is Shreya Grace B. Pascal. She is from Philippines. She is the Aya Young Leader Beach Simbising ILAC Young Leaders Congress 2019 Vice President in Accounting and Finance Intercontinental Network. Let's welcome our speaker. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, Miss. Good afternoon to everyone.
Ma'am, how are you, ma'am?
I'm doing fine. I'm
Okay,
excited for today's session.
okay, ma'am. Welcome to in our webinar session. Ma'am, first you give some description about yourself, then you can start your presentation.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
As mentioned, I am Miss Cheryl Grace B. Pascual, and I'm from the Philippines. I see a lot of the comments coming from the Philippines. Hello, mga kabayan. I'm basically a part of the admin here in the Department of Education in the Philippines, specifically in Iriga City. If you know it, some of my maybe some of my region or region members are here as well. I was actually one of the top young leaders in the Philippines last 2019 through Ayala Young Leaders. And at the same time, I serve as the vice president for Intercontinental Network Incorporated, which is a nonprofit youth organization that is focused on different advocacies and development. Aside from that, I am also taking my master's, specializing in English language teaching. I'm an English major specifically, and I'm also part of the learning resource management section here in the Philippines that develops the learning resources for the youth. Okay, so I guess I can start now my presentation.
Yes, ma'am, you can start. Um, so you have to share your presentation.
Okay, I'll just check first. Okay, so is it visible?
Yes, yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay, so thank you.
Okay.
Okay, again, good afternoon to everyone. It depends on which part of the world are you. If whether you're in the west or in the here in the east, it's just a good day to everyone. So our topic for today would be language skills development through innovative teaching. You can see the play in the words in the title. It's innovative. From E, we know whenever we put this prefix E on different words, it's often associated with technology. Like for example, is e-learning and the like. So I just added it because it's like integrating technology when it comes to teaching. So innovative. Sir, so let's have a little introduction first. Actually, this introduction was already it happened already prior to this presentation. But then again, let us get to know each other first. I am Miss Cheryl B. Pascual, but you can always call me Mishi. Whenever you put your comments here in the chat box, I can see those from YouTube, but I'm not sure if I can access the one at Facebook. Maybe I can get back to it later. Or at the end of the session, you can just post your questions at the open forum. So yes, my name is Miss Cheryl. You can call me Mishi, and that's my nickname. So you can type what's your nickname. So don't be nervous. Just please type your questions. Let this session become a small talk between friends. So here are some of the questions. You can type your answers in the chat box and the comment box below, or whatever in whatever platform you are currently in. So, how have you been doing, teachers and professors? I know most of the professionals in this platform, especially the ones taking this session now, is or are teachers or probably professionals in the educational sector, professors in college or in higher educational institutions. So, how have you been doing lately? So, let me ask you what happened, or maybe if you have a set of experiences during your classroom practices last pandemic. We all know that the pandemic has been what, a few around going to 3 years previously, but then again maybe some of you are still struggling in the um, transition that's happening. We've been transitioned into the pandemic instigated learning and teaching, and now we're going back to the supposed new normal. But then again, what were the benefits and challenges of teaching during the pandemic, which is more associated with distance learning? So did you have a lot of struggles? Like, oh, actually I seen this comment by Sir John Mitchell Galang. He mentioned that he has internet connection instability currently. So he's having a hard time accessing this session. So this is also one of the probably most common challenges that we have during distance, especially online learning. So you can just comment down below. Next, are you happy with the news that there is this called possible transition of education into complete distance education? Here in the Philippines, maybe some of my kabayan as well know this, that we're transitioning back to the normal. There's face-to-face classes, and maybe I know in some, actually we're part of those countries who had the last transition back to the normal. But then again, there were news that in some colleges, in some universities, they're trying to adapt the complete distance education, especially given the fact that there are a lot of benefits with distance education. There's there's no need for transport. There's You would have little to no expenses at all except those that you would need for electricity, and as well as your gadgets, your wi-fi connection or internet connection. Aside from that, what do you think could you do to prepare to the newest 21st century learning trends and classes that can challenge the digital immigrants in teaching? So, we all know that most of the teachers now are digital immigrants. Maybe the new teachers, the ones who had just graduated and had been maybe 1 or 2 years into teaching, those are digital natives. But most of us who were born, let's say, prior to 2000, we are basically digital immigrants. We were born in a period or in a time wherein there was not much or probably little um, integration of technology in instruction. Maybe we have been able to experience those times when we were just focused on books, focused on whatever information is being fed to us by our teacher, and sometimes we just go on and write all of our lessons without any form of technology integrated. But then again, we transition into college, we transition into working on our working stage, then are being introduced or given the chance to become digital immigrants. We go from not traditional to digital classrooms. So we're basically digital immigrants. But then again, there's a lot of challenges that we face compared to those who are teaching and are also digital natives. So what can we do to prepare those? You can just chat in the comment section your answers. So basically, in this session, we will be discussing only four key points. First is LSD. This is the what do you call this contraction that I put. It's actually language skills development, but I just shortened it to LSD for easier comment because language skills development is such a very long phrase. So, what is LSD? It's an overview. So, here we will discuss basically a little bit of the concepts on language skills, its importance, and the challenges often met with LSD. Next, we would have the 21st century classroom discussion, wherein we would put in inputs about the 21st century learner, the teacher, the environments, and the other trends that circulate this um, concept or in this trend, in this type of classroom. Next, we would have innovative teaching. When we talk about innovative teaching, we would be focused on diagnosis. I'm not pertaining to medical diagnosis, but rather the diagnosis when it comes to education. If you're familiar with diagnostic tests, measuring the readiness of the learners, the readiness of the environment, and even the readiness of the teacher. Next, we would go on with considerations and preparations for innovative teaching and, of course, the learning process. The last part of this discussion will be focused on the LSD innovations and programs, wherein we would look into what everyone or what the teacher should consider in making their choices when it comes to LSD programs or projects, innovations, and at the same time, I would suggest some few language skills development innovations and programs that anyone can integrate in their curriculum. Okay, moving forward, let's go with the first one, which is language skills development. So here, let's first look into what is language skills development or LSD. So language skills development is basically the process by which children come to understand and communicate language in different modalities or skills during early childhood. So in the sense, this is the process of knowing how to communicate, knowing how to understand. But it doesn't just focus on comprehension because there are basically four skills rather that fall under language skills. We will discuss it later on. So um, through this, it often begins in the early stages of one's life. As mentioned, it starts with early childhood. Language skills, however, develop gradually throughout one's life. So in this case, there's this common belief that language skills development starts at a certain age or probably at infancy already. Some even propose that language is already being learned inside the womb. That's why there are some. It starts with the recognition of sounds, recognition of words. Sometimes there are even instances wherein the babies would move right whenever they hear the sound. So that's already a form of language skill development. Next, there's also this belief that it stops at a certain age. They say that when we reach adulthood, language skills development sometimes stops. However, contrary to that belief, it actually develops gradually throughout one's life. So it would go up and down. Sometimes our language skills would improve highly, then all of a sudden it will decline at some point because of certain activities, and eventually go up again due to a few instances of learning, education, enrichment, until further it declines due to old age. So that's what's commonly happening with language skills. And then still, it is highly important, of course, to make a strong foundation at early childhood. Why? Because this would support better learning in the succeeding years. So there's always this importance. That's why that's one of the critical stages of life, early childhood, because this is where the foundations of every aspect of a person happens. Usually, at this point of life, it's very critical because it would gradually affect the adult in the making. The child is basically an adult in the making, and if something goes wrong with skills development or it's somewhat delayed in some point due to many factors or different factors, it would gradually affect the performance of the adult in the long run. So there, as I mentioned, there are basically four language skills: speaking, writing, listening, and reading. So I know, especially for those who are, um, what you call this, English instructors, special language instructors, these are the basic of the basics. We have encountered this 1,000 times. Speaking, it's of course how you speak your words, etc. Listening, writing, and reading. So it's basically just the basics. First, we often start with listening, then we go with speaking, right? The child learns to listen first, of course, then learns to speak and imitate the sounds they heard. And after speaking, goes with reading. They learn how to read or write. Sometimes it goes with writing first, but most often it's reading then writing, because writing is much more higher for me than reading. Next, let's go with the importance of language skills development. So basically, this is just a gist. We're just going to run over this because I know you're very much familiar with this, but this is just a bit of a reminders. So, importance of language skills development. Of course, we have the expression, the first and foremost function or the reason why we have language skills development, especially when it comes to the output skills that you call, which is reading and speaking, rather speaking and writing. So when it comes to expression, of course, it encompasses communication in all forms. As I mentioned here, these are just summaries again. This is the entry point to understanding everything about yourself and the environment. So whenever you express yourself, this is not just a one way around. It's not just about communication is not just a one way point, right? It's vice versa. It's a give and take relationship between the person, the individual, and the environment. So it's basically understanding everything. If you have watched The Miracle Worker, it's a film regarding a mute and deaf child. She's mute and deaf, and at the same time, yeah, she's mute and deaf. So it's hard for her to I rather no. I think she was blind and deaf. But because she was blind and deaf, she was having difficulty speaking as well, because most of her senses, the input senses, which is the eyes and the ears, are not functioning well. So it was hard for her to understand everything around her, which caused multiple problems like misbehavior and, yeah, violence, acts of violence, because she doesn't understand anything. When we understand our environment, we learn to develop other behaviors, other succeeding skills that connect with it. So that's, if you can watch that film, it's good. This is not promotional video, but yeah, I highly recommend it, especially for language teachers, because you would get the perspective and the essence of why communication is important, why understanding everything around you is important, or why is it important to at least have one form of um input, like the eyes, the ears, or even the touch. Touch is also a form of input sense for me. I call it input sense because you get data or you get understanding of what's happening around you through that sense. So, next we would have, of course, education. This is the second function or the importance of language skills development. Here, basically, language skills is the foundation of higher learning. As I mentioned before, um, once you develop language skills, the other skills would follow. Mathematical skills, critical thinking skills, it would all be anchored on language skills. You need it to understand, of course, learn other concepts, which follow math, science, and other of the pertinent subjects that would follow. That's why, no matter how much we try to, how do you call this? Some here in the Philippines, there are actually basically some, what you call this, uh, debate regarding the importance of certain language subjects like in our native Filipino language. But then again, there's this importance. You cannot remove, or you shouldn't remove, language subjects, because it's basically the thing that would support the other, or understanding the other concepts. Like, for example, English. English is the universal language. Learning how to understand and speak English would give you the gateway to understanding subjects. Sometimes, some of the English majors or those who specialize in English perform better in some aspects compared to those who are not that fluent yet, because they are better with comprehension, they are better with understanding, so they get the problem easily, so they can provide the answer easily as well. That's some of the observance I observance, yes, I've seen in different classes when I had observed a lot in both public and private schools because I was teaching before as well. Next, we had go to entertainment. Of course, we would need language skills for entertainment. Some of them would watch TV, listen to music, sing. Of course, if you're gonna sing, you're gonna speak the lyrics of the song, writing, calligraphy, and the like. Then last would be social function, but this is also very important. Of course, when you talk about social function, it would include using language or using communication in any form, whether it's reading, writing, speaking, or listening. You would need to communicate or connect with society, with people. Sometimes we can use it to function or write official documents, or maybe talk when you need to talk to the bank about a problem regarding your account. You will need to speak, and sometimes you will need to write, you will need to read, of course, the document. So those are the importance of language skills. It's basically everything that one can use in life. Next is, of course, the challenges in language skills development. When we focus on the challenges, of course, there's always three: mental, emotional, and physical. So when we talk about mental, this would go with the mental challenges, and of course the disabilities like problems with IQ, autism, ADHD, psychosis, and the like. So most of the learners, or especially individuals who have certain disabilities, certain challenges that hinder their learning or the language skills development, would often have the other two challenges, the emotional and the physical. For example, I have a friend who had autism. His autism is not that severe when it comes to the challenges in the mental aspects, but then it affects his physical one. He has weak joints. He would often need to go to physiotherapy to um, check on his joints, especially when he's writing a little bit of um, problem, and he would mm, suddenly maybe bent his finger or something. His knees would fall out of nowhere. He would fall because his knees gotten weak. So there's an interconnection between these three challenges. So that's emotional. Rather, that's mental. For emotional, of course, there's a lot of factors. These include effects of environment, the learner readiness, social influence, the EQ as well, the mood swings, and other factors, environmental factors, both internal and external environment. There's two types of environment. So that would gradually affect the emotional capacity of the learner to develop skills. Next, we would of course have physical, which is basically what affects the senses. Of course, physical or the physiological constraints would focus on the illnesses that would stem from the different mental and emotional disabilities, as I've mentioned previously. So those are the challenges, and as teachers, we need to be very aware of detecting, or rather, at least diagnosing on the light scale, some of these challenges that could affect the learner readiness. There are some cases wherein the learner or the family of the learner is not yet aware of the learner having certain disabilities, and sometimes they would stigmatize this disability. Like for example, in one of the movies, again, I'm fond of movies when it comes to teaching. Every Child is Special. It's an Indian movie, a Hindi movie. um, in this movie, if I remember, the child has dyslexia, and it was not yet diagnosed. I think that it was the teacher who was the one who found out, and the family at first treated it negatively. They weren't really that happy. They think um, the child has a really bad problem when it's just something that can be treated, or at least supported by the teacher. You can teach a child with dyslexia through different methods. However, the family did not take it lightly. They did not take it positively, and they were really angry at the teacher because he made a diagnosis like that, thinking that the child would go nowhere. But in fact, the child was a genius. So if you could take time to watch it, that shows challenges in language skills development. Next is, let's go with the second part of this discussion, which is the 21st century classroom. So let's focus first on the 21st century learner. There's a lot of videos on YouTube that would discuss what the 21st century classroom is. They would discuss a lot of things about, let's say, how it's fast paced, how there's high standards for the 21st century class and the like, and the diversity is so large that, and sometimes it even encompass different cultures, different phrases, and different aspects. Actually, diversity is so big in its sense that sometimes the rights would interconnect. There's sometimes challenges as well when it comes to that. So let's focus first on the 21st century learner. So when we talk about 21st century learner, there's a lot of expectations that come with the phrase. When you talk about 21st century learner, of course we would think, oh, it's a high performing learner with high coping skills. Those are the learners that would perform very well, very well. They have a large skill set, they have a wide knowledge base because they are digital natives, as mentioned there. They are very cooperative and respectful of themselves rather, and everyone else. They are healthy in mind and body. However, reality is not always in that case. There are times, of course, there are some learners that fit the expectations or the what you call the it's not a bias, but the prejudice, the expected learner, 21st century learner characteristics as mentioned. But not everyone is like that. So in reality, there are a lot of learners who are easily overwhelmed or they have a lack of focus if you've been teaching right in the mm, 21st century class. There are a lot of learners who have little focus. Maybe this is affected by their um, overexposure to social media that would just, in just one click, you can flick everything up. You can transfer from different interests to another, which is also the focus of diverse interests. Then they are also digital addicts. Of course, they are digital natives, but then again, they tend to be addicted to social media, or not just social media, in any form of digital or technical stuff. Like for example, the computer, the different gadgets, the social media and other media platforms as well. So there's also the presence of the extremes. I know in every generation there is the presence of the so-called extremes. The students who are the adamant advocates, the ones who are fighting for everything. They are saying, oh, that's against human rights, that's against my right, that's against the others' rights. Um, there are these types of students that would just make a lot more mess on that certain aspect on being an advocate. Next, we had the isolators. You're familiar with this. There are these students who have the tendency to isolate themselves. Then the violent ones, of course, there's a large increase of violence currently with the 21st century learners. They are very much prone to doing a lot of stuff that would result to violence, that would result to um, other problems in the classroom. And of course, the Wednesdays, I call them the Wednesdays because it's a trend nowadays, the goth style, the ones with dark lipstick and dark makeup. Then of course the victims, the ones who always cry a lot, just a little bit of this and they would cry, just a little bit of that and they call themselves depressed. Then but then again, there's also the diversity in mental, physical, emotional, and social health and well-being. So this is the focus as well. Despite all what I said, at the presence of the extremes, it's just a matter of diversity. And because we've been more aware of the diversity of the learners right now, so all of these extremes, all of these normies, all of these that are basically different characteristics of a person show out. So as a teacher, you need to be aware of this as well. because this is very much different from our time wherein we are forced to be normal, we are forced to act strong, we are forced to like get along with everything, just go with the flow. Right now the different learners are very much diverse, they are very much versatile, they are very much um varied, yeah, varied, diverse. So let's go with the 21st century teacher. If there's the learner, of course, there is the teacher. So there are also expectations like teachers are expected to be high performing, multitasking. We're also expected to be digital natives as well. Of course, we should be inclusive. In every form, our methodologies, our approaches, they should be inclusive. We are also supposed to be friendly yet assertive, great classroom managers, innovative and integrative teaching methodologies. But then again, as I've said, expectations are often not in line with reality. A lot of our teachers right now are overworked and overwhelmed because of a lot of workloads, especially for those who are teachers who are having blended learning, who go with the online learning and the same time the face to face or the in person classroom. So it's really hard shifting your gears in different days of the week. I know I'm just going to share the Philippines setup again because that's where I am. So a lot of the teachers right now, especially those in private universities and private schools rather, they are having the blended learning. So they would go online, then at the same time they would go, sometimes they would go face to face. So there's a larger amount of work to be done because you would need to prepare your PowerPoint, and at the same time you would need to prepare other performance tasks that you would let the class do during your face to face session. So that's gonna be hard. Next, of course, the digital immigrants. We're expect, as I've said, most of the teachers right now are digital immigrants. And as one of my students said before, you're digital grandmas and grandpas because they said even though we are very much familiar with the digital age, some of the things that we know about the digital age are already outdated or probably trending since about 5 years ago. But it's very much different with the now. Then we also have sometimes subtle bias. No matter how much we how do you call this? Sometimes hide it. There are a lot of teachers who still has bias actions. And sometimes the learners are very sharp, especially some of the learners right now. They are very, very sharp. So they have this tendency to like um call you out, mom, you're having favoritism. They would just say it in jokes, but then there's a little bit of truth in it. Then there are also teachers who are over friendly. Sometimes when we teachers fail to put in the boundaries, we get challenged by the students or they cross the line. Next, we have those who are also struggling with classroom management and, of course, the overused method. So, because innovation is very common nowadays, there's a lot of innovations, innovative projects, there are a lot of experiments, new approaches, methodologies that are being incorporated with education that sometimes you would use methods that are already overused. It's already been used many times by different teachers. And that's the challenge for the 21st century teacher because your new ideas might be ideas of others way back. So, and you're just going to revamp it in some way. Next, the 21st century education trends. So again, this is very common for us. First would be the metacognitive learning. It's common, independent learning. We know about it as thinking about thinking. So it's basically just assessing yourself and reevaluating yourself so that you can learn better. Next is, of course, outcomes based education. This may come in different terms: performance based, learner centered. This would come on different, what you call this, different terms when it comes to education. But then again, there's what we call borderless classroom. So most of these are actually learner centered. The difference is outcome based is more most focused on from the word outcomes, objectives, performance tasks that would fall under outcomes. They would need more on the product rather than the process. When it comes to borderless classroom, this would mean two things. Borderless as in those from who are having classes on the online platform because that's borderless. That's not inside the four corners of the traditional classroom. Next, we also have the connotation of borderless as something cultural. Like there's something called interconnectedness between the students and the society that is outside them. So that's the form of borderless culture in the cultural context. Next is we have the social simulation or simulation, then the reconstructionism. This is very much common in a lot of universities and approaches of different instructors nowadays, wherein they are really much anchoring their instruction, their approach in teaching to social reconstructionism, like linking the objectives, linking the methodologies, the projects, assignments, or everything that happens inside the class as a mere simulation, or at the same time, based on reality of what would the learner face after education in the university. Like this would help them not only become high performing individuals in the social context, but they would also develop into reconstructionists. They would change society for the better. So those are the most common 21st century education trends. There are a lot actually. So you can just Google it up and it would pop up. So you can just browse through it. So let's move on to innovative teaching, or how do you actually find the need to innovate or to integrate your innovations into teaching. First, of course, we need to diagnose the learner in the class. So before you can do any thinking about innovations, you need to first diagnose the class on what are their learning styles, their capabilities. I know this is very much tiring, especially for instructors. There are some instructors who handle about 60 to 100 students in class. But then again, in the duration that you are with your class, at some point you will know, or at least you are very much familiar with what they are going through or what are their preferred learning styles, the little bits of information and characteristics. It's very good if you could jot it down because that would become the framework for you to find what form of innovation or the best method. Again, the best method, there's actually no best method. There's no best, or there's no one method that would be the best. It's often the method that works. So the best method is the one that works. So in order to find that best method that works, you would need to find first um, the framework, which is the diagnosis that you would do. That's why there are a lot of teachers who would perform diagnostic tests before their classes start, or before the semester or the grading period would start. So in this case, this is just some of the examples. Of course, the name of the student, the learning style. It's better if you would see or enumerate the learning style. So this would be the guide for you on which would be the prevalent, or the one who is the dominant um, learning resource that you would use for the class. Of course, it would be best if you had varied learning resources, but then again, that's not always what happens in the reality. That's the ideal. You would want to have a lot of learning resources that would at least serve the three learning styles, with this audio, visual, and the kinesthetic. But that's not always the case. There's a lot of constraints, learning resource availability. There's also the time constraint. Of course, it's gonna be consuming a lot of time, a lot of effort for you as a teacher that would add to your workload. So you would at least need to know what is the prevalent or the dominant learning style for your class. Then there's a lot of other indicators that you can add probable um, disabilities if there are some students that you have learning challenges in your class. There's also some teachers who tend to diagnose the reading ability of the children. Like for example, if one is a slow learner, is a little bit not, or some of them may be ahead of others, there's a different practice for that. There's a different innovation for that. So of course, you can manipulate the table. You can add a lot more of indicators, as long as they would serve the purpose of guiding you in developing your innovation. Next is considering the factors in learning. So there's a lot of factors: objectives, learners, resources, possible challenges, and the overuse of technology, and other factors. When you have, especially language skills development, you need to very much be particular of all these factors. Objectives, of course, you need to align your objectives, your smart objectives to the curriculum. Of course, your learners, you need, as I've said, mention, or as I've mentioned before, your learner should, or rather, you should diagnose your learners on their readiness, their capabilities, and disabilities. Of course, resources, all of this would not work, especially if you're very much lacking with resources. There are a lot of teachers who are assigned in mountain areas or very much rural areas, and they have a lot of things to consider, like the financial capacities, the learning resource availability, electricity availability, because not everything can be supported by electrical stuff. So there's available resources to support your innovation. Next, the possible challenges, the internet connectivity, as I've said, lack of gadgets. So that's one problem as well. And of course, in some of the urban areas, there's also the overuse of technology. Sometimes when students are very much familiar with technology in everyday, like if the teacher uses it every day, they become too used to it that sometimes it affects the overall performance. There are some times previously when I was an instructor, a teacher in junior high school, uh, after the students were exposed to 8 hours 8 hours of online teaching, online classroom, online classes, there was a student who actually had an increase in the reading glass grade. The we call it grado here in the Philippines. It became higher in just a span of 2 weeks, and the parent came to the principal to tell them about what happened, and they were encouraging to lessen, or they were saying or proposing to lessen the screen time of the children, so that it would not affect the health. And then there were a lot of instances wherein teachers would faint because of overwork or overexposure to technology, to the screen, to the UV rays, or yeah, to the rays, the destructive rays of technology and stuff. So that's one thing to consider for urban areas, especially those for very much well equipped with technology. Next is other factors. So these are just additional ones, which is environment, social and financial constraints, and other, of course, your approval of the educational authorities. Here in the Philippines, before you could fully use a certain innovation, a certain learning resource, you would need to have the approval of the division office or the Department of Education. So that's one thing to consider. Next is, of course, the process of every innovative project. We would go first to planning and preparation. These are just reminders for each stage because I know we're all familiar with this. So, one thing is, whenever you plan your innovative project, especially with language skills, you need to be meticulous even at the first stage. Think and take the extra mile. So, there are some educators and learning resource developers who are very much not meticulous. Write they would just write what they could, but there are a lot of grammatical errors. So it's the job of the quality assurer, of course. But then again, there's nothing wrong with trying to improve the quality of your own learning resource, so that there would be less corrections, there would be no need to return your project for revision to you because they saw a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of problems with the format. So, by being meticulous at the first stage, it would help you get the approval of your project faster. Next is the initial integration. Of course, when you integrate, for example, your project is already approved, you can use it in class already. There are some teachers who kind of like um, they make adjustments in the middle of the integration in class. When you do that, you need to first observe and take note of each stage. For example, if your learning resource, if your innovative project is not working, you can always jot it down. Like, you can take note, it's not working for kinesthetic learners. There's a problem with integrating it when it comes to audiovisual learners because they couldn't hear the project well, or something like that. So be patient and do not meddle too much with everything. Remember, this is the trial process. This is where you are looking into what things you can revise, you can improve with your project. Then, of course, when it comes to assessment and evaluation, this is, of course, for self and peer evaluation. You can evaluate yourself as well, as this would be very much helpful. So whenever you are being given um, a certain, let's say, critic, that there are some people who are critiquing, but they are using a somewhat negative tone. Despite all that, please accept the critic wholeheartedly, because it's for your own good and, of course, that of the learners. So you need to evaluate yourself, especially in that aspect. Next would be the revision. So, of course, when there are critics, there are comments, suggestions, recommendations. Always be open to revise your project. So, when you work on your, let's say, your project, always also work with your passion. So, of course, when you work with your passion and motivation, you need to stay positive, because this is what will keep you going into making more innovations in the process. Next, this is the last one. When we talk about LSD innovations and programs, so what to consider in making your choice, and here are a few suggested LSD innovations. So reminders in choosing your LSD innovations and programs. So at the very least, your innovations should be the following. They should be smart. So if you're familiar with the SMART, it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Specific, at the very least, be specific with certain descriptions of your projects, your programs. At least be specific with the objectives as well. Make sure your program or your innovation is measurable. Of course, there's always time for evaluation. You can also develop your own evaluation or monitoring tool. Of course, attainable, because there are some innovations that don't go well with the grade level you are teaching on. There are some teachers who tend to make a lot the very easy innovations. There are some teachers who make very difficult innovations that would make the children struggle. Then there's also relevant. Of course, your innovation should be relevant to the curriculum, to the grade level, to the subject. Next, it's also time based. Of course, make sure it's also relevant to the time you're in, the period you're in, and at the same time based. It should be also attainable at a certain time. Integrative. So this would encompass content. It should have integration with content, integration of skills and values development, as well as different learning styles. Next is innovative. Innovative. When I talk about innovative, this is both computer assisted and new and techy. So as much as possible, it would be good if you have um, new ideas incorporated with your innovation or with your program, learning skills development program. Of course, learner friendly, always prioritize the learner because it's the core of education. Next, of course, is inclusive, because if you're it's not always that your program would encompass everything, or they would be able to be applied into every group, learner group. But then again, it would be very good if it could be um, adapted into different contexts, into different cultures, into different groups, so that you can share the idea or share the educational opportunity that would come with your learning program or your language program. Here are the don'ts for your innovations. Of course, please please do not make a program or a innovation that would put too much pressure on the learner. Please do not encourage competition in the toxic level. There's a competition that's in a healthy level, but as much as possible, lessen it. Just make it average. Next, of course, never use outdated sources or methods in your innovation. That's why it's innovation, it's something new. Toxic or bias, of course, this goes against inclusive education. Confusing or vague, or there's isolated bits of information, this would contradict integrative, because as much as possible, we're encouraged to interconnect everything so that the learner would learn better, so that the learner would be able to understand the interconnectedness of everything, the objectives, your program, and of course, the lesson that they are currently in, or the grade level they are currently in. And of course, never be stagnant. So I hope whenever you make your LSD innovations or programs, it's something that could have room for improvement, or maybe you can further develop in the future, so that additional innovations for you, and at the same time this would pique the interest of the learners, because sometimes learners, when you give them a new program, for example a certain game you develop for language skills, after they get used to it, or maybe you use it 5 times in the classroom throughout the span of a few months, they would get used to it and would get bored. When they get bored, you need to find another innovation. So it's better to like make an innovation that you can further improve, or further find ways to develop better, or use in different projects, different areas of your lesson. For example, in English, if you find a certain module, develop a certain e-module, you can use it in reading, listening, writing, so the learner would not get used to it and get bored. Sometimes when we are over familiar with a certain project, program, or learning resource, we don't learn anymore from it because we get bored easily. We look, no, what? We lack interest. We don't maintain the interest, and of course, we then lack the focus to learn. Of course, here are some adjusted language skills. We've come to this now. Um, you can always use this. Please take note of these integrations. The first is the atomic habits. So when we talk about atomic habits, encourage integrating language skills with everyday conversations and functions. So there are a lot of language skills teacher who, because of probably lack of time, overwork, overload, they fail to encourage the integration of language skills development in everyday things, like for example talking with your students in the language you're teaching. If you're teaching English, encourage English, yes, English speaking in the class despite it not being perfect. Always tell your students that diamonds come from the rough. So in order to get better at language speaking, you always need to go with the basics first and then gradually improve. And also, of course, anchor your LSD with their aspirations. I had a learner once um who's already at the ninth grade, but he's still not very good at reading. He's at the beginner level of reading, probably around grade 2, but he's already in ninth grade. So one way to encourage him to take language skills supplementary classes was to tell him that he would need it in with his dream. I asked him, "What is your dream, or what do you want to be in life?" And he told me, he shared to me in a funny way that he wanted to be a gamer, an official gamer, because especially with the trend of online sports, MMORPGs, and the like, he said he want to be an official one. We want to be an official athlete in online games. So I told him, if you want to be an online athlete, of course you will need English language skills, reading, writing, and at the same time, because there's a lot of functions that would go with it. Of course, you will need to read. You will need to understand what certain instructions mean, or so, for example, the description of the character. So that's it. Next is, of course, online cultural exchange. This happened in college. One of my teachers made this integration, but you can also use it. If you want to teach, they said, if you want to teach, or if you want a learner to learn a language better, find a language native. I'm not talking about those who are teachers who are very much adept. It's okay, but it's better to find a foreigner, not a foreigner husband or wife, but a foreigner, someone who you can communicate with. For example, for me, my teacher encouraged us to learn a little bit of the words in a foreign language, just a fun activity. And in order to do that, she encouraged us to find a foreign friend online. But there's a little bit reminders later. So you can use Discord, Zoom, on other online social platforms to encourage cultural exchange sessions. For example, there you would group your class into three. The three classes can find, for example, if you're teaching French, um, in order to encourage that, you can find three French individuals, French natives, who can talk with each of the group, one native to one group, and they you can like talk every now and then online. You should be there, by the way, as a teacher. um, assist them in the process wherein they can talk a little bit about things that, for example, the differences in the culture, and to like, and it they would learn the small words every now and then, little bit by little and little by bit, because of course if you have a friend you would be encouraged to communicate. So if they develop friendship, and of course you can get better at the language, that's a much easier way than teaching the ABCs of the French language to the child. So that's online cultural exchange. Next, we have the Kotobi app. So uh I'll just show it to you maybe later. The Kotobi, if you can search it, the Kotobi apps, it's the Kotobi author and the Kotobi reader. The Kotobi reader is for your student. The Kotobi author is for you as a teacher. So we have modules. Some of us may be making our modules in word processing, maybe in Microsoft publication. Maybe some of you are very much adept with using it, and maybe sometimes integrating with Photoshop or other applications. But Kotobi apps is for me is one of the best recently, because you can integrate music, you can integrate audio there, and the child will just, after you make your e module, your online module, something like that, e module. This can be in different subjects, or for example in language skills development. You make a e module for developing speaking skills. So you, as a teacher, record your voice on how to pronounce this and this, or you can just search on the net. Then after that, the child would have to download the entire module just once, and he or she can access the module in his gadget, any form of gadget, cell phone, the tablet, or the laptop, or the desktop computer. And he or she can open it as long as there is the Kotobi Reader app. And then once they open it, they can access it even on offline. So there's no need for use of online connectivity every time they open the module. So that's one good aspect of it. So you can download this, and you can just explore the app. Maybe, I don't know, maybe in 2023 I can request in IGP if I could speak about Kotobi apps, or I can help you go with the process of developing an e-module. Then the last would be the MUN program. So this had been the trend, I think 5 months ago. I think there's a lot of MUN programs still now, but they are focusing on face to face ones. But you can use this in your classroom. Model United Nations program is basically just an upgrade of a debate. When you have a debate in class, there's always the pro and the con, right? The two sides. But in the MUN program, you're basically making a speech, impromptu speech, then at the same time delivering it in front of about 16 or more um, delegates, supposed delegates, participants, who can vary from different nationalities, or even just mere participants of your class. So this program can encourage multiple skills, boost the confidence of the speaker of your students, and of course improve diplomacy skills. Because in this program, you will be speaking a lot, making your speeches, you will be writing your speeches, and you will also be writing resolutions. So this is already a simulation for those who dream to become diplomats, or for example politicians of a certain country. So you can use this as a simulation program. This is an upgrade of debate. So these four are just some of the suggested. There's a lot of integrations that you can develop, and at the same time search on the net. That's for language skills development. So here, just a word of caution, okay? For always be there for your students. So despite, of course, the cultural independence, we've been very much familiar with independent learning. So despite the culture of independent learning, we are still facilitators of learning. We are active behind the scene, but we are never absent. So, especially in the case of cultural exchange and MUNs, choose the invited guest foreigners wisely and carefully. Okay, we do not want cases of child abuse, child or cyber abuse that would come just because of a certain project or a certain assignment. So, if possible, be present throughout the conversation, or at least be in the same vicinity to assist your students. In the case of older students, just monitor them regularly. Uh, that I think that ends it. So again, thanks everyone for listening. So Let me leave you with this quote. They say to have another language is to possess a second soul. So, language is not just about speaking, it's also writing, reading, and of course, listening. So, if you want to be part of my coalition network or if you have any requested topic for me to discuss, always feel free to message me in the following social media platforms. And that ends my speech. Padayon, continue moving forward, everyone.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful presentation. It has been very informative for us. Ma'am, it's time for our quiz session. After completed our quiz session, we come back again in our uh, question answer session. So you have to wait for some minutes. Dear participant, now we'll go for our quiz session. To join our quiz session, you have to go www.slido.com. Then you have to enter the code, and the code is IGP2. And the code is IGP2. After short video, we'll start our quiz session. So don't forget to mention your friends to join our quiz session. So let's enjoy our quiz session. Hello, hello everyone. Dear participant, if you want to join in our quiz session, you have to go www.slido.com. Then you have to enter the code, and the code is IGP2. And the code is IGP2. Already 26 people join in our quiz session. We are waiting for your joining, so please everyone join early as soon as possible. We will pick your name from Slido, so join with your full name, which will directly print on your certificate, and top 10 will be awarded with quiz completion certificates. After 2 minutes later, we'll start our quiz session, so please everyone join. We have King, Leah, we have Mary, we have Daryl, we have Jordan, Joy, we have Safal, we have Mary Jane, we have Jamima Bisavilo, then we have Christina, we have Muhammad Nasiruddin, we have Kefa Rivera, we have Ogi Domingo, we have Corazon Tamio, we have Ricky Arcolina. Already 33 people join with us. Dear participants, we are still waiting for joining, so please everyone join our quiz session. To join our quiz session, you have to go www.slido.com. Then you have to enter the code, and the code is IGP2. And the code is IGP2. লাইভে কিন্তু আমার আওয়াজ শোনা যাচ্ছে না কেন?
আওয়াজ শোনা যাচ্ছে না যে? দাঁড়া।
Dear, dear participant, if you want to join our quiz session, you have to go www. Dear participant, এখানে 37. Already 37 people join. Uh, after 1 minute, after 1 minute later, we start our quiz session. So you everyone join our quiz session, and don't forget to mention your friends to join our quiz session. Our first question: what activities promote language development? Option one: puppets and role play. Second option: water play and circle time. What activities promote language development? Option one: puppets and role play, and second option is water play and circle time. And the correct answer is option one: puppets and role play, and 100% people are right. Now we go for our dashboard. In our dashboard, the top one is Aji Dominigo. Then we have Jannatul Firdos. Then we have Jamie Milan. Then we have Justin B. Savedo. Now we go for our second now question. And the question is which activities will develop language development? Option one: play in the role play area. Second option: riding a bicycle. And the correct answer is playing in the role area, and 100% people are right. And our top one is Jannatul Firdaus. Then we have Jordan, Joy. Then we have Janinia, and then we have Corajan. I'll go for our third one question. The question is language is a part of intellectual development. Option one true. Second option false. Again, I say the question. The question is the language is part of intellectual development. Is it true or false? And the correct answer is true, and 97% people are right. And our top one is Janiriel, then we have Corazon, then we have Jamilin, then we have Vikina, then we have Evelyn. Now we go for our fourth question. And the question is what is the nativist view of language development? Is it option one? Children should be taught language. Second option, children are born ready to develop language. Language. What is the nativist view of language development? Is it option one? Children should be taught language. Second option, children are born ready to develop language. And the correct answer is option two. Children are born ready to develop language, and 76% people are right. And the top one is Ricky. Then we have Chari. Then we have Janilian. Then we have Christiana. Then we have Abilene. Now we go for our fifth now question. Is child moves through development at his or her own rate? Is it true or false? Each child moves through development at his or her own rate. Is it option 1 true or false? And the correct answer is option 1 true, and 89% people are right. Now we go for to see our leaderboard. In top one is Ricky, then we have Jerry, then we have Genial, then we have Evelyn, then we have Oji. Now we go for our sixth question, and the question is development. Option 1 is a continuous process which begins at conception. Second option begins at puberty. And the correct answer is option 1 is a continuous process begins at conception, and 97% people are right. And the top one is Ricky, then we have Cherry, then we have Janivia, then we have Oz. Now we go for our seven long question. This area of development deals with language development, solving problems, and learning. Option 1 intellectual, second option moral. And the correct answer is intellectual, and 97% people are right. And the leaderboard, the top one is Ricky, then we have Cherry, then we have Genial, then we have Evelyn, then we have Daryl. Now we go for our eighth long question. How many stages of development does a child go through? Is it option 1 7 or second option 4? How many stages of development does a child go through? Is it option 1 7 or second option 4? Speaker. And the correct answer is 4, and 62% people are right. Still, our top one is Ricky, then we have General, then we have Charlie. Now we go for our ninth question. And the question is fine motor skill is a part of cognitive development. Is it option 1 true or second option false? Fine motor skill is a part of cognitive development. Option 1 true or option 2 false? What is the correct answer for this question? Fine motor skill is part of cognitive development. And the correct answer is false, and 32% people are right. And the top one is Janeliel, then we have Charlene, then we have Ricky or Colima, then we have Leah, then we have Christiana Vidal Rosario. Now we go for the last and final question. Define the first stage of child development that lasts through the first year of life. Is it option 1 infancy, second option middle childhood? Again, I say the question. The question is define the first stage of child development that lasts through the first year of life. Is it option 1 infancy, second option middle childhood? And the correct answer is infancy, and 84% people are right. Congratulations, General Wheeler. She's our top one. Then we have Charlene. Then we have Ricky R. Coleman. Then we have Leah Fahnula. Then we have Alex Jabber. The fifth position we have Alex Javier Viras. Then sixth position we have Kingwei Ishia. In seventh position we have Oji Domingo. In eighth position we have Evelyn Waperi. In ninth position we have Jamie Lin. Then in tenth position we have KF Rivera. Congratulations, our top 10 quiz competition winner. We have all of your name which you entered during journey. You pick your name and prepare certificate and we post them on our Facebook official page. Our Facebook official page is Institution of Global Professional. Now, after semester later, we go for our question answer session. After short video, we'll start our question answer session. Participator request to ask their question in comment box. Please add this speaker name. So let's enjoy our question answer session. Uh, Hello everyone, welcome back. We will go ahead and take some time for question now. Just a reminder, please be sure to type your question into the comment box. Uh, Now let's welcome back again our speaker. Hello ma'am, welcome back once again.
Hello. Yes,
Uh,
hello, Miss Denise.
Now we'll ask question you have to ask answer those questions. Ma'am, our first question from Flomia Salvejo. Good afternoon, Amazon Sherry. Grace, what are the factors to an innovative teaching?
Oh, okay. So thank you, Sir Salvieo. So for the question, again, what are the factors to an innovative teaching? So there's actually a lot of factors that could affect your innovative teaching, your innovations, or for example, any innovative project that you want to integrate with your teaching. Some of the factors would be, of course, the ones that are encompass, the ones that are part of the learning process, which is, of course, the learner, whether the learner can cope with your innovative teaching, your innovation, whether they can understand it in the context or whatever it is. Of course, the performance of the teacher as well can be a factor. How well do you know your innovation, or how well can you perform it? And of course, the acceptance of the different stakeholders, like for example, the school, whether they approve of it, or for example, the parents, whether they welcome the type of teaching that you have. Some parents may not approve of it, some parents may accept it. So there's a lot of factors. Then also, of course, the guidance of the expert. For example, you want to integrate your innovation, something that has to do with the MUN program, but then again, you don't know anyone who is an expert of the MUN or a debate type project. So that could affect the performance of your innovative teaching. So those are some of the factors that can affect the so-called innovation. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, ma'am, thank you for this question. Uh, Dear participant, we're waiting for your questions. So if you have any question, you can ask in our comment box. Dear participant, we are waiting for your question. If you have any question, you can ask. Our speaker will answer them. Ma'am, I think there is no more question. We covered all question. So thank you so much, ma'am, for your excellent presentation. It has been very informative for us. I think everyone can uh, learn from your presentation. And on behalf of IJP, our profound thanks for taking out the time from your busy schedule to present the slide about language skill development. I know that everyone sitting here there was fascinated by your presentation. Those slide gives everyone a great idea about the language skill development. We gained a lot of information one place. And again, I would like to offer our thanks. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you as well.
Dear participant, now it's time for to give you our webinar code. Today, our topic is language skills development through innovative teaching, and the code is IGP 8900, and the code is 8900. Without code, no one is eligible for certificate. Without code, no one is eligible for this. Without code, no one is eligible for certificates. With code, you can claim your certificates anytime. Thank you everyone for your active participation. I hope everyone can enjoy our webinar and can learn from our session. See you in our next session. Till then, stay happy and blessed. Once again, I am Irene Saptar from Bangladesh. Thank you so much, everyone.